Welcome, and thank you for joining me tonight for another slow and steady journey into the past. This time, we'll travel back thousands of years to the banks of the Nile in ancient Egypt, not to walk with pharaohs or stand in the gleaming light of temples, but to follow a quieter, shadowed path to the desert valleys where tombs were carved deep into the living rock. Behind every grand monument, behind the pyramids and the painted chambers filled with gold, were ordinary men who lived ordinary lives. Stonecutters, painters, and laborers. People whose hands ached, whose eyes strained in the dim glow of oil lamps, and whose lives were ruled not by glory, but by dust, repetition, and duty. Tonight's exploration will be told in 4 parts. First, we'll place ourselves in the sandals of a tomb builder and walk through the rhythm of an ordinary day. Then, we'll step into the life of Hatshepsut, the remarkable woman who ruled as pharaoh, and see how her reign shaped the very tombs these men built. After that, we'll consider the mysteries, the questions left behind in the stones and artifacts, still puzzling archaeologists today. And finally, we'll glance at the lives of the privileged few, those who sat above the laborers in wealth and power, feasting while others toiled. For now, let your body sink into stillness. Let your breathing fall into an easy rhythm, and imagine yourself under the blazing Egyptian sun. Following a dusty path into the Valley of the Kings, the village is quiet at dawn. The air is cool with a faint trace of night still lingering, but you know the sun will soon rise, and with it, the heat that presses down like a weight. You wake on a simple mat inside a narrow mud brick house. The walls are plain, though here and there you might see faint traces of painted decoration, patterns or figures meant to bring good fortune. The roof above you is flat, often used for sleeping in the hotter months. There is no luxury here, but compared to other villages in Egypt, yours is considered fortunate. For you live in Deir el-Medina, a settlement created specifically for the craftsmen who carved the tombs of the pharaohs. Your work is hard, but your community is valued. You're not a slave, but a skilled worker, paid in rations of grain, and permitted to live with your family. In this way, life is steady, though never easy. After a modest meal, perhaps bread coarse with grit from the grindstones, and a little beer to wash it down, you gather your tools. Bronze chisels, wooden mallets, baskets for rubble. The tools are simple, but in your hands, they can shape eternity. The walk to the tomb site takes you along rocky paths through a landscape of sun-bleached cliffs. The Nile, with its fertile fields, lies far behind you now. Here the land feels harsh, dry, and silent. The Valley of the Kings stretches before you, its cliffs like great walls of stone, guarding the secrets of the dead. Inside the tomb, the air is cool, but thick with dust. By the flicker of oil lamps, you and your companions chip away at limestone. The sound is steady, a rhythmic tap, 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 echoing in the chamber. It is slow, endless work. So measure your progress not in days, but in seasons, as walls inch backward into the mountain. Dust clings to your skin. It catches in your throat. But you continue hour after hour. Sometimes you carve channels in the rock to guide water that might seep in. Sometimes you haul away rubble in heavy baskets, each step up the tunnel leaving your legs aching. When the chamber walls are finally complete, your task changes. Painters and decorators join you, filling the surfaces with vivid images. The pharaoh greeting gods, the journey of the sun across the sky, the weighing of the heart. You may help prepare the plaster or grind pigments into powders. Reds from ochre, blues from crushed stones, blacks from soot. Even in the dim light, the colors glow with life. The rhythm of your day is not only labor, but ritual. You live under rules, and the work is sacred. The tomb is not just a chamber, but a doorway between worlds. You must be careful, mindful, respectful of the gods and of death itself. Superstition runs through the village like a quiet undercurrent, whispers of curses, omens, and spirits of the dead. Still, the work goes on, as it has for generations. When the sun sinks at last, you return home. Your body is heavy with fatigue, your skin darkened by the sun, your lungs still carrying the dust of the stone. You eat with your family bread, beans, perhaps a little fish, and listen to the chatter of children as they ask about your day. You tell them only fragments, careful not to dwell too much on the tombs of the dead. Later, as the desert cools, you lie on the roof of your house, looking up at the sweep of stars. The same sky your ancestors saw, the same sky your children will see. Tomorrow, the rhythm will begin again. Another day in the service of eternity, another day in Deir el-Medina. To understand why tombs were carved so carefully, and why builders gave so many years of their lives to these hidden chambers, we need to pause and look at the rulers they were built for. Among them, one name stands apart: Hatshepsut. She was a woman who, in a world dominated by kings and male gods, rose to hold the full power of Pharaoh. Her story, like the tombs themselves, is layered, intricate, and filled with both achievement and struggle. Hatshepsut was born into privilege. The daughter of Pharaoh Thutmose I from childhood, she was surrounded by the rituals of the court, the language of the gods, and the expectation of dynasty. She married her half-brother Thutmose II, as was customary, joining family lines to secure the throne. For a time, she was queen consort, standing beside him in ceremonies, overseeing temples, and ensuring the continuation of tradition. But when Thutmose II died young, the balance of power shifted. Zair Thutmose III was only a child. The kingdom needed a regent, someone to guide until the boy came of age. Hatshepsut stepped forward. At first, she presented herself as caretaker, ruling in the name of the boy king. But gradually something remarkable happened. Step by step, she took on more authority. She appeared in ceremonies not as regent, but as pharaoh in her own right, who wore the royal headdress, the false beard, the regalia of kingship. In temple inscriptions, she described herself as chosen by the god Amen, destined to rule. Egypt had seen powerful queens before, but none who claimed the throne so directly. Hatshepsut transformed herself from a supporting figure into the central presence of Egypt's power. Her reign was long and steady. She was not remembered for war and conquest, but for trade, prosperity, and construction. She ordered the building of magnificent monuments, the most famous being her temple at Deir el-Bahari, rising in terraces against the cliffs. For the builders, this meant years of labor hauling limestone, carving statues, painting reliefs. It was work on a grand scale, work that reshaped the landscape. And yet, beyond the dust and toil, her vision left behind something serene. Even now, her temple stands as one of the most graceful structures in Egypt, a harmony of stone and desert light. Still, her life was not without tension. By taking the throne, she disrupted tradition. Some saw her as usurping the role of her stepson, Thutmose III. For years, their reigns overlapped. She as pharaoh, he as heir waiting in the background. When she finally died, he took full power, and much later, her monuments were defaced. Names were chiseled away, statues smashed. It was as though someone tried to erase her presence from memory, to restore the idea that Egypt had always been ruled by kings. And yet her story survived. In the lines carved deep into temple walls, in the ruins that still stand, and in the tombs built under her reign. For the builders in Deir el-Medina, Hatshepsut's time meant steady work. It meant carving elaborate burial chambers meant to house her nobles and officials, men who wished to follow her into eternity. Their chisels tapped against stone under her authority, their pigments brightened the walls in honor of her reign. They may have never spoken her name in daily life, but the rhythm of their days was shaped by her rule. And so, through the dust and silence of their labor, the will of a queen turned pharaoh echoed in every chamber of the valley. Her life, both bold and fragile, reminds us that history is not only about battles and victories, but about choices. Choices that shape the world of ordinary people as much as that of kings. And in the quiet glow of the oil lamps, as you imagine yourself still chipping at stone, you might feel the distant presence of her ambition guiding the work of your hands. As the centuries passed, many tombs in the Valley of the Kings fell to ruin. Some were robbed, emptied of treasures, their walls scarred by thieves who sought gold in the night. Others were forgotten, swallowed by sand and silence. Yet one tomb remained hidden, undisturbed through the ages, and it would become the most famous of them all. The resting place of a boy king, Tutankhamun. Imagine the valley centuries after the time of Hatshepsut. The cliffs still loom, but the passageways are buried, sealed behind rubble. Dynasties rise and fall. Pharaohs are born, rule, and pass into legend. Time drifts onward like the slow, unchanging Nile. Then, much later in the early 20th century, Foreign archaeologists arrive with shovels, notebooks, and patience. Among them is Howard Carter, a man who spent years searching for something elusive. Year after year, the valley yielded little, and he believed that all its secrets had already been uncovered. But Carter persisted, convinced that one more tomb remained, somewhere beneath the stones. In 1922, after years of searching, he noticed steps cut into the bedrock, partly concealed beneath debris from other excavations. Slowly, carefully, the team cleared the rubble. The steps descended into shadow. A sealed doorway appeared, its plaster still marked with the insignia of the royal necropolis. Beyond it, silence and the promise of something untouched. When Carter finally peered inside, he described seeing wonderful things. The tomb of Tutankhamun was small compared to others, modest for a king, but it was intact. Inside were objects layered upon objects, chests, chairs, statues, and shrines. Within them, the nested coffins of the young pharaoh himself. He had died at only 19, his reign short, his life fragile. Yet in death, his burial was elaborate, filled with treasures meant to accompany him into eternity. Gold inlaid stones, delicate carvings, and the now famous mask that gazes out with serene, timeless eyes. For archaeologists, this discovery was a window into the past. Unlike other tombs, already looted and stripped bare, this one offered a glimpse of what had once filled the chambers of kings. Beds shaped like animals, tiny ivory carvings, containers of food and wine, toys from childhood, and ceremonial weapons. Each object spoke of a life lived quickly, but preserved carefully. The details were as intimate as they were grand, showing not only the power of a pharaoh, but the small traces of a person who had once been a boy, walking the palace halls. And yet, mysteries linger. Why was Tutankhamun's tomb so small? Why was it hidden so well? And why did it remain undiscovered while others were plundered? Some suggest his death was sudden, and there was little time to prepare. Others think the tomb may have been originally intended for someone else, pressed into service at the last moment. The arrangement of chambers, the unevenness of decoration, hint at haste. Even today, questions remain. There are also whispers of other secrets. Some archaeologists believe there may be hidden chambers still concealed behind the painted walls, passages yet unopened. Scans and studies have given conflicting results, and the debate continues quietly, decades after the first discovery. Like so much of history, the tomb does not give up all its answers. It remains a puzzle, holding back just enough to stir the imagination. For the builders of Deir el-Medina, Tutankhamun's resting place would have been another commission, another stretch of years in stone and dust. They could not have imagined how many centuries later their chisel's marks would draw the eyes of the world. To them, it was simply another task, sacred but routine. And so the tomb stands as a bridge between worlds, between the everyday lives of the craftsmen and the mysteries that still shimmer, even now, in the cool silence of the valley. While the builders of Deir el-Medina ended their days with bread and beans, perhaps a little fish or lentils, the world of the pharaoh was another realm entirely. The tombs carved into stone were not only resting places, but gateways to eternity. The rituals surrounding death reflected both reverence and abundance. To imagine this contrast, let us step away from the dust of the quarry and into the halls of a funerary feast. When a pharaoh died, the preparations for burial stretched far beyond chiseling stone. Priests conducted rituals, scribes recorded inventories, and artisans fashioned treasures of gold and lapis lazuli. At the heart of these ceremonies was food, both symbolic and real. Offerings filled the tombs, but they were also shared among the living in great feasts. Imagine long tables set with bread baked in many shapes, from flat loaves to tall, decorated cones. Bowls of figs and dates, fresh melons and grapes, pomegranates with jewel-like seeds, and jars of honey glistening in the lamplight. There would be meats roasted and stewed, beef, goose, and fish from the Nile. Beer, thick and nourishing, poured freely, while wine, once rare, flowed in finer vessels. Each dish was more than a meal. It was an offering, a symbol of life continuing beyond death. To feed the living was to honor the dead. To fill the tomb with food was to ensure the pharaoh would not hunger in eternity. The feast was not silent. Music accompanied the rituals, harps, flutes, and sistrums shaking gently, their tones weaving into chants spoken by priests. The air smelled of incense. Resin burned to purify the space, its smoke curling upward like a bridge between earth and the divine. For the elite who gathered, it was both solemn and celebratory. Mourning mixed with reassurance, a reminder that the pharaoh was leaving the world of men, but would reign forever in the afterlife. Meanwhile, beyond the palace walls and sacred courts, the builders and laborers who had shaped the tomb might never taste such delicacies. Their knowledge of these feasts came only in glimpses, leftovers, whispers, or distant observation, yet their work was inseparable from these rituals.
Ow.
Without their chisels and pigments, the pharaoh's eternal house would remain unmade. The feast, the offerings, the ceremonies relied upon the quiet rhythm of men in stone chambers, striking rock until it yielded to their will. In this way, the funerary feast was both a contrast and a continuation. The pharaoh was honored with abundance, while the craftsmen returned to their modest meals of bread and beans. And yet across this gulf, there was a strange connection. Both shared the same night sky, both lived in the rhythm of the Nile's seasons, and both placed their trust in eternity, one through riches, the other through labor. As the feast faded, the tomb would be sealed. Offerings left inside, the pharaoh's body resting within gilded shrines, the music silenced, the smoke of incense gone. The builder's work complete, the elite's rituals ended, and another chapter in the Valley of the Kings quietly closed. And so our journey ends, here in the shadowed desert valleys of ancient Egypt. We began in Deir el-Medina, walking in the weary steps of a tomb builder. We traced the story of Hatshepsut, a queen who ruled as pharaoh, her ambitions echoing through stone. We marveled at the mysteries of Tutankhamun's tomb, still puzzling and shimmering with unanswered questions. And we ended at the table of a pharaoh's funerary feast, where abundance marked the divide between rulers and the men who served them. As you rest now, perhaps you can feel the slow rhythm of their lives, the steady tap of chisels in the rock, the quiet murmur of prayers, the timeless stars overhead. Their world was one of dust and devotion, of labor and ritual, so distant and yet strangely familiar. Even across thousands of years, the rhythm of daily life, its work, its struggles, its brief comforts remain something we can still imagine. So let the past fade gently now. Let the tombs grow silent once more, the desert calm, the stars unchanging above. You are here, safe, resting in the present. The work of history is complete for tonight. May sleep carry you gently, as steady and eternal as the Nile itself.